Hi, I'm Patricia Greenberg, and welcome to It's Okay to Be Old, a show about all things aging well. My guest today is Jacynth Bassett, and she's the founder of Ageism Is Never in Style. She's an expert, a consultant, and keynote speaker on age inclusion, longevity, intergenerational strategy, and dynamics. Welcome, Jacynth.
Thank you for having me, Patricia. We've been trying to get this podcast episode recorded for I feel over a year now,
Oh,
right?
yes, yes.
So
Yeah, we've been on each
it is,
other's radar screen for a long
yeah.
time.
So I am very excited to be here. Thank you for having me.
So, fashion is born out of current events and cultural shifts. I'm taking this from your material. And I want to ask you, how has the aging population influenced popular culture and trends?
Oh, that's a really good question. I mean, one could argue for a long time, well, it has and it hasn't. So a lot of our obsession with youth, I mean, it dates back centuries, but it really became heightened in the 20th century with the golden age of Hollywood, industrialization, and then the emergence of the teenager and the baby boomers. So you could argue that in one respect, the aging population and those who are older today have been influencing and shaping culture and fashion from a very young age because they became the audience, the consumer to really target and market and go after. And that's all sort of snowballed and is what's perpetuated our youth obsession. The difference is that of course we're living longer. So rather than now, whereas traditionally brands are constantly just trying to go younger and younger, we're going, hang on a second, do not dismiss and do not alienate those who are older because demographics are shifting. Populations are, well, we've got birth rates dropping. So if you keep going under earth to younger people, that's going to get smaller as a consumer group. But actually, if you start recognizing and valuing older and aging populations, you're going to maintain and have a bigger audience. But that's still a message that we need to heed and hasn't been heard enough. And I would say that interestingly, in the last I don't know, 10, 15 years, what we've seen is sort of the odd peaks and troughs with fashion, saying, now age is really acceptable and champion in fashion. And if I'm honest, my heart slightly sinks when I see some of those articles. I think the New York Times did one recently because I've seen those headlines for the last 10, 15 years. And what we see is quite the same pattern, which is it's a trend for a season. It's the same models. It's often usually the supermodels rather than a spectrum of different models of different ages. They generally fit the same look, which is typically white, long gray hair, tall and slim. There is not diversity within older models. And when you look at the percentage of older models on the runway or in campaigns compared to those who are younger, we're talking about less than 1% often. So we can say, yeah, great, ageism is over. Aging populations are now loved and received by fashion. The picture that paints a very distorted picture and it's not nearly as accurate as the reality. The one that I find quite interesting to talk about trends is the grandma core trend. That's been a thing for a little while. And I have to say, I personally really don't like it. I think it's patronizing. I think it's stereotyping. There's absolutely nothing wrong with being a grandma, and there's nothing wrong with dressing in that way. But it is a stereotype. And when brands say, look, we're championing aging populations and older audiences by channeling the grandma core aesthetic, like, are you really? Or are you just playing to crowds of younger people to make them go, oh, that's so cute and that's so quirky and that's so, kitsch and things like that. So I think there's still a very long way to go. I think there are influences and I think it's starting to get better. But yeah, it's a really good question because you could say for a long time they've influenced everything, but at the same time, they're being alienated. So,
There's so much to say about those trends because and you can tell me if this is the case in the UK. In
yeah,
the United States, the average woman is 5'4" and 170 pounds.
I think it is similar in the UK. I'm gonna be honest with you. I'm not good with pounds.
Yeah.
I know my stones and dress sizes,
Okay.
um, but
But
but it is very
that is
similar.
just that the
It's a very
national,
similar
yeah,
picture,
yeah.
exactly. And I think that that's exactly it. Even if I've always said this, is you can put an older woman in a campaign on the runway. But if you are not designing to cater to the reality that women's bodies often do change and develop with age, and I'm not aesthetically, you absolutely can love contemporary style, latest fashions, all of that, but you might want to wear clothes that just flatter the body that you now have in a different way, or maybe you want to cover some areas or show off some different areas. If you are not designing to cater to that, then you are not really catering to that audience. So, there are some influencers, for example, who are really big now, who have millions of followers, and these are women in their 50s and 60s. But the reality is they have the bodies of a much typically a younger woman. So, and I'm not saying you can't have that body when you're older, but they have one that is more likely. So they're wearing fashions that the average person probably isn't gonna wear. So it is not the same as actually catering to that audience, in my opinion.
So I will give you an example. I'm 65
Yeah.
and I go around telling everybody how old I am because of what I do. And
Yeah.
I try to get other people not to be embarrassed about to say how old they are because to
Say
me,
your age. Yeah.
that's the opening that the floodgate can open. You can say, I'm 65 and this is how I'm feeling about being 65 and this is what I'm going through. So when I was a teenager, we wore Levi's and we drank Coke and we wore sneakers. Nobody calls them sneakers anymore. Trainers,
Really?
run.
I
Yeah.
call, I mean,
Well,
I've trained
it's
as more
come, yeah,
English, but
it's come
yeah,
back
yeah.
into style, but we just bought sneakers. You didn't buy running shoes. Running shoes
Right. Right. Yeah.
because of
No, now there's so many
yeah.
different purposes for them. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a shoe for every move you
Right.
make, right?
Yeah.
And so if you say to me at this age, if you used my frame of references from my teens, that would be more nostalgic and interesting to me than trying to get me to wear an outfit that doesn't speak to me. And I find
Right.
more and more that whatever the height and the trends of fashion are they're not appealing to my age group because it's not something we wore in the first place, right?
And it's right. And it's so, I feel it's such a missed opportunity. You mentioned Levi, there's so many kind of heritage brands, both in the US and the UK, that could be perfect to do an intergenerational. See, I'm all about, intergenerational. I love doing intergenerational campaigns. The brands argue, oh, we go for younger, we feature younger people because we don't want to alienate the younger consumer. And also we want to try and bring them in when they're young. And when you've got them when they're young, they'll stay with you forever. Well, there's actually increasingly more data and studies disproving some of these assumptions. So first of all, actually 70%, AARP found this, 70% of consumers of all ages are more likely to shop with a brand that features a mix of ages in its advertising. And there's also been research done in the University of Kent here in the UK that's finding that younger consumers are not put off by an older model. They are just as likely to purchase the clothing. In fact, actually, they might really love it because this is where it keeps getting missed, is younger audiences want to see individuals that are role models, people can inspire them to feel better about their future. So intergenerational marketing is kind of the perfect answer because what you can do is feature all ages or different ages, a spectrum. You can feature younger people and speak to that audience. You can speak to older people. The older person, the younger person, they can self-select who they want to identify with. And it's kind of a win-win. And statistically, there's more and more data proving that. With social media content, with advertising, all these things. But that's where I'm like, these heritage brands, that's where you could do a great campaign, is like Levi's. I mean, I know they've done some recently about icons and they're all younger celebrities, but wouldn't it be great if they did icons of all ages? Who defines what an icon is? It shouldn't be defined by age. So yeah, something that I've been encouraging and pushing. I'm hoping I'm getting a little bit of traction with some brands. But I think that there is Burberry is an example who have started to do that a bit more, definitely. I do not think Burberry is perfect, but they have certainly kind of really lent more recently into their heritage and getting that age mix and not just falling into the tokenistic trap. But there have also been times they have done the granny core. So it's kind of, it's not perfect by any means. But I think, yeah, intergenerational marketing is a great way to be able to do that. And then to bring in, you say, I mean, Gap did a campaign with Gwyneth Paltrow and her daughter recently. I mean, whatever you think of Gwyneth Paltrow, it's an interesting option. And so you bring
Start,
in
right.
the
It's such
start.
a, yeah.
So I think there's so much opportunity, missed opportunity, and I think at the moment it's a real blind spot for brands to not realize how much, because this is the other answer they give, but the older consumer, it wants to aspire to be younger, so they want to see a younger model. Well, actually, as I always say, there's aspirational and then there's delusional. As somebody older is not going to wake up and say, I'm going to wear this face mask and be 20 tomorrow. So it's about being the best version of yourself today. So yeah, I mean, so many of these myths that ironically come from the later 20th century, that actually the now older generations originally fueled in one respects in terms of how they were the target market to go after when they were younger, and they perpetuated the marketing, all came up with these different methods to market to them, fear of aging and all these things. Now they're older, they're going, reject that. No, we need to change this. They were the revolutionary people, so let's keep being revolutionary, right?
Absolutely. Jess, tell us how you came to fuse fashion and fighting ageism.
So it all came from my mum. I same with you, if you don't mind. I hope you don't mind me
Oh,
saying
no,
my mum had,
absolutely. Yeah.
yeah. So my mum had me at the age of 40. So in the early 90s, that was definitely less common than it is today. She was a geriatric pregnancy, horrible term. And really from a young age, I was very conscious that my dad was only a year younger, but I was very conscious I had older parents. So that was kind of the subconscious seed in the back of my mind, thinking something's not quite right here. And then, not about them being older, but the way in which they were being, it was just, there was the way society was treating them, even the way I was feeling, I've got older parents, is this something to be worried about? All these, it was very mixed things that I couldn't really process as a little kid. But now I look back and I go, that's interesting. That's where that came from. And then it all came from with the fashion was my mum and I both love fashion and style. It's been one of our mutual loves. We went shopping yesterday, and actually it's the same thing. We went to an amazing vintage store that's very famous in London. As she said, they didn't give a second glance to her when she walked in the door. I did say to her, actually, in this instance, they're just very pretentious. So that's probably why they didn't look at me either, mum. But the point being is that was a very common experience. We'd go into shops. My mum had disposable income and, she was prepared to buy clothes. She wanted to look good. She still does. And she said, just turning 50 didn't mean my love of style disappeared. And yet, society and shops and shop assistants, everything was treating her as if she was no longer worthy. And, online was the same. Every image was of a young person. So that's where it all came from, was to challenge ageism through the lens of fashion at first. And then it's kind of become, ageism as never style has gone much bigger now. So we work across industries and sectors. But it's funny because somebody said to me not that long ago, oh, it was really clever of you of how you came up with the idea of tackling ageism through fashion. It wasn't strategic. It was just what I knew. It was just my lived experience of what I witnessed and what I understood. It was not that I went, what's the best way to address ageism? I'll
Yeah.
go through the fashion lens. So that's, yeah, how it all came about. And then I set up my fashion business straight out of university with just my small savings. And we were all around championing age inclusion. But the reality is, it was a bit ahead of the curve. It was definitely an uphill battle. And I knew I wanted to change society and to eradicate ageism and foster age inclusion. So I set up Ageism Is Never in Style, originally as a community platform. And then that grew and grew and that snowballed. And it's where we've come to today. And the funny thing is, once upon a time, everyone would say to me, isn't it so niche what you do? But no, because age touches everything. We are all aging. So actually, it's the opposite of niche. We have, as I say, we now operate across sectors, industries, continents, because we have aging populations. We have multi-generational living, all these different things. So it affects everyone and everything.
You and I had a little conversation offline before we started about how we are treated when we go into certain environments, or we're
Yeah.
speaking at a conference, or we're promoting what it is we're doing, and how we are still getting that pat on the head. You're a young woman. People think I'm younger than I am, so I get it a little bit too.
I
But
bet you get the wow, you look amazing.
yes,
That
yeah,
for your
yeah,
age, that
yeah,
that
yeah.
that for your
And
age, yeah.
yeah, for your age. And I still can't wrap my head around whether that's a compliment or an insult. I have issues with that too. But it's like, we go into that and it's like, wake up, look around you. When I do my speaking engagements, women come, they're all majority in their 60s and 70s. Not, I don't attract younger women. Maybe it's because the title, it's okay to be old. People don't want to hear
Yeah,
that
but
word.
I'd love it if wouldn't that be great if you did? Wouldn't
Yes,
it be great
yeah.
to
It
bring
just
all
just
ages to
just
that? Yeah,
embraced it. I wish,
yeah.
that were the case. But, it's so interesting to me that my audience is all saying to me, they don't say to me, I wish I looked like the model. They say, I just want to wear what I'm comfortable in. I want to feel good when I go to an event, whether it's formal occasion, a work event, or casual. I want to feel comfortable. This is like the prevailing theme that comes out. I want to feel comfortable. But yet the world is telling you to dress and feel comfortable, makes you old. Only old ladies wear loose clothing. It's this continuous, I mean, you know more than anyone know that. So it's there's people that are afraid to go out their front door. How do we tackle that?
Oh, I mean, yes, it is definitely. I mean, I've had a lot of women who say to me, also they end up wearing certain clothes because it makes them feel safe or even hidden because
Mm,
they are scared of being judged. And I always remember back when I was starting my business, back it was like 2015, 16. And actually it was what gave birth to the name Ageism Is Never in Style. I went to a networking event and it was all men where it was like a speed dating with businessmen. You spent 20 minutes pitching them, telling you about your business, and they would then give you feedback.
mm,
And I had sat through 2 hours of being told by all men how my work was boring, uninteresting. Is that really a problem? I want to be like, have you spoken to your wives, your sisters, women have you ever spoken to anyone? The level of disconnect was profound. And it spoke volume. And actually, I was so angry by the end of it. That's where I turned that anger and came up with the phrase ageism is never in style. So, I mean, I think it is a massive ecosystem of different parts of how we can eradicate ageism and better support people to feel comfortable, empowered, to feel that they can age their way however they choose. For me, where I try and pull my resources and expertise comes in culture. We love culture. I think culture is a massive piece that gets missed in this space a lot. And when I say culture, I don't just mean business culture, I mean world culture, pop culture, entertainment, music, fashion, all these things that often can get art that gets belittled or sidelined or treated as just a nice to have or frankly sometimes superficial. These have massive impacts and sway over how we feel and the messages we internalize and how we feel about ourselves and then how we behave. So for me, where I put my resources in is around culture and then around business and workplaces and helping companies better foster a culture that is not ageist and is age inclusive. So I say it's not just about eradicating ageism, it is proactively creating cultures that are inclusive of all ages and different generations that really harness the strength of intergenerational collaboration because we have up to 5 generations working side by side in the workplace, but there's not always cohesion. So what we say is turning it from multi-generational coexistence to intergenerational cohesion. So that's a key part. And actually, intergenerational collaboration has been found to be one of the most effective way to dismantle ageism because it helps dismantle assumptions and biases by interacting with people of different ages. And then also we work with them to improve their marketing, their comms, their outputs. So also to translate to the world that you are worthy, you are relevant, you are valuable at any age and stage of life. And we were talking about this earlier about longevity. I I have very mixed views about the word longevity. I think it's been very co-opted by people in the biohacking space. For me, longevity is about a whole of life intergenerational agenda that is about how people are valued, how they have purpose, meaning, are able to contribute to the world across all age and life stages, and it's still being massively overlooked. So that's where I focus my work. That being said, that is not the whole piece, right? There are so many other areas, health, well-being, care, support, politics, all these policy. There's a lot that has to happen, and it's almost about pulling the levers strategically to move the dial. And for me, I feel there's more impact sometimes in the culture and business space than say around policy and governance. I think that's quite slow. I think they're more reactive than proactive. So that's why I am very supportive of that work, and I have worked with people in policy and in nonprofits and charities. But for me, I think a lot of real change unfortunately does come with our capitalist system, with business. Um, but I think it's a big ecosystem, and then we can all play our role in how we can help to dismantle it. The thing I would say though is it really starts, there's three forms of ageism: interpersonal, systemic, and internalized ageism. Most of it really starts from within. And if we can recognize that we have all internalized age negative narratives, the UN has found that it's from as young as the age of 4, we internalize age stereotypes. The better we are to then become a bit more self-aware and start to address that. So going back to talking about fashion and models and things like that, when I was starting to research my business, I noticed how, well, I did some surveying, and I asked women over the age of 50 if they wanted to see themselves represented. And about 50% said no.
Mhm.
And I was really shocked because I thought, have I got this completely wrong? Have I completely missed that representation really matters to everyone? And then I dug a bit deeper in the results, and I realized they were applying their own internalized age bias. They were assuming what it would look like. They were assuming that it would be presented in that granny kind of stereotypical way. They were used to being stereotyped so much. So I persevered, created the new imagery what we had in mind. And I actually got some messages from some of the ladies who were quite dismissive, and they went, "Oh my God, I never imagined it could look like this. I love this. This is for me." So that's a good example of where we all have internalized bias, and we have to be more aware of it so that we can then open the door for ourselves a little bit more.
Tell us about what you're doing now with this, because this trajectory it fell into your lap, so to speak, with the idea, the concept. Nothing really falls into your lap, right? Everything takes hard work. But how you've translated? Because I have a lot of questions about how the younger people may or may not let the older person in for advice and counsel at work, and an older person may not be so receptive to a younger person come and telling them new ideas. So tell us about what you have going on now in
Yeah,
that.
it's really
Yeah.
interesting that. And, even from my own experience, as we've talked about, people haven't always liked me being younger in this space. Ironically, as I say, the most ageism I personally faced has been in the age sector
Yeah.
because people have said you're too young to be doing this and know what you're talking about. So what we are doing now is, so we have three kind of pillars to our work. So we have our community, our global community, where we're constantly producing content, educational ideas, inspiration, and also we have a modeling network and a content creator network where we facilitate partnering members of our community with brands to help improve representation, to create content that actually really resonates. Then we have our campaign arm where we look at doing more marketing materials, working with brands to improve their visuals, their storytelling. I mean, really, all of this comes down to storytelling, telling that empowering message around age. And then we have our consultancy. So that's where majority of the time we are going into companies and helping them cultivate a culture and also a bigger strategy that really engages all ages, because as I say, you've got 5 generations working side by side in the workplace. This is pretty unprecedented,
Mhm.
and you've got hierarchies being disrupted. We don't have just the complete, junior roles are just younger people, senior roles are older people, people are having second, third squiggly careers. This is why I don't love the term experience. I love, Patricia, that you just claim the word old and you just proudly use it, because in this space, so many people have tried to come up with synonyms for older and old, right? And because they come with negative stereotypes. And one of the ones that I have come across quite a lot recently is that word experienced. They use the word experience to say older. And I think, again, we have to be careful with that, because somebody younger could be more experienced than somebody older who's only recently pivoted and started a completely different career. And if you're saying that because of their age, they have more experience in this career, that is completely false. That can be, it could be true. Time and age creates opportunity for more experience, but it does not directly correlate to it. So that's what we're really seeing in the workplace is those dynamics playing out. It's definitely causing some frictions and tensions, but there's also more and more research that's showing the power of intergenerational collaboration. And we've been doing a piece of research with Kantar recently looking at AI and the implications with multi-generational workplaces and how actually it can be harnessed together to create
Mhm.
amazing outputs. I know there's a lot of concerns about AI very reasonably and understandably, but if we can actually harness these dynamics that are converging in a strategic, intelligent, collaborative way, we can have much stronger outputs, innovation, and frankly, bottom line as businesses. So that's what we really do is we go into a lot of organizations, we get it onto their agenda, we build that awareness. Some of it's really very early days in terms of just getting the awareness, and for others, it's about turning that awareness into action.
You're bringing up such a profound point because you can be in a workplace and a younger person has a fabulous idea, but they say, well, we only listen to the guy or gal that's been here for 30 years. And that person doesn't even know what they're doing. It's interesting to see that even an older person may glom onto that. I'm going to use my age as a way to get away with this because we're all in this place where we want to be seen and we want to be heard and we want to be valued. It's very interesting. You just got appointed as an ambassador to the Stanford Center on Longevity.
Yes.
Congratulations. I
Thank
love what
you.
they're doing. Tell us a little bit about your role there.
So it's pretty fresh. I've actually been sort of chatting with them for about a year now. And we've done some work also. They have a great platform they have a collaborative content partner called the Longevity Project. I think you've interviewed Ken Stern,
Yes,
am I
I
right?
did. Yes, yeah, I had
Yes.
them on the
So
show. Mhm.
yeah, so
Yeah.
Ken, I've done some work with Ken, with Grand People, his platform, and we helped kind of help them with some of the social side of that. So that was a lovely piece of work last year, and then they invited me at the beginning of this year to become an ambassador. So really, it's about furthering their work, their research around this new roadmap of life. And as they say, we have got this 100-year life now, but it's not meant to. See, I've even said that the issue with the 100-year life is that it can be quite alienating as a concept because the vast majority of people are not going to live to 100 today. I don't expect to live to 100. So if we talk about the 100-year life, it can feel quite exclusive. And I think they themselves saying, yeah, it's more around trying to say one in two children today could live to 100. So we need to re-engineer the life course, our services, our systems, our products to understand that this whole going from birth, education, career, retirement route is just becoming completely outdated. So really through the ambassadorship, it is getting onto the skin of their research, helping to support it, contributing to, they have a monthly magazine as well, which I'm hoping to contribute to, and also pulling together the resources of other ambassadors so we can come together and essentially, like we talked about this space. We kind of all know each other. Or at least we're on each other's radar. How can we be more collaborative and supportive? I've got to catch up with the team, with everyone tomorrow, so let's see how that goes.
Yeah.
But it's been yeah, really interesting and really interesting to meet I mean, some of the people I knew already and some people didn't know at all, and really interesting to see the work they're doing in this space.
I think I'm about 30 years older than you. Am I right?
So I'm 34 next week.
Yes. So I'm 31 years older than you. Do you socialize with people 65 and older? And do you feel like you're being parented or patronized? Does it feel like a genuine friendship to you?
That's a really good
And it's
question.
a loaded question,
No, it's a really good question. And to answer the first part, yes, in that I do absolutely socialize with people older than me and younger than me, in a very appropriate legal way, just to be clear. Like nothing, I'm
yes.
not, I mean, I work, I give guest lectures and I'm a governor of a school for 4 to 18-year-olds, but I'm
Okay.
not saying I'm hanging out with an 18-year-old. So I guess more of my friends are my age or older. And my husband's 12 years older than me. So automatically he's a Gen Xer, whereas I'm a millennial. And really, from through my work, I have fostered such wonderful, enriching, meaningful relationships with people of all ages, but also in my personal life. So have got a huge passion for dance and for Pilates. Dance I've always had, Pilates more recent in the last 10 years. Going this evening, and we're a small group, but I'm the youngest. We've my teachers in her late 50s. I mean, they've all taken part in our they've filmed stuff for Ageism
Oh,
Is Never in
wow.
Style,
Wow.
and they've become great friends. And one of them's moved to Paris, so when I go to Paris, I see her, and she's nearly 60, and they've become real friends. And actually, I would say, if that question is really good about the is it patronizing? No, I would say occasionally in a more professional environment where I've collaborated with people, there has been maybe a slightly more mentor-mentee kind of vibe, and I think perhaps at times I have been a little bit boxed in as the young person who knows social media, for example. And I have seen that actually it's more when people haven't known who I am. They maybe know my name, but they don't know what I look like. I've been at events for work and I have been very quickly dismissed or just shoved a phone. So you'll take our picture or you'll know social media or assumed I'm much more junior than I am.
Right.
And then when they have heard who I am or ageism is never in style, it's quite interesting. You can see it like on their faces going, oh crap, I shouldn't like, oh, and yet they change their behavior, and that shouldn't be the case. It shouldn't matter who I am, what my work is. You shouldn't have treated me in that way in the first place. And so that's been quite interesting. So I say in a workplace context, occasionally I've had that, but from a friendship standpoint, I guess maybe I like to think, I see good in people, and I don't feel like that there's been because actually also because of the fact that my parents are older, because of the fact that my husband's older and his parents were also older, so his dad had him when he was older. I've also been going through life stages that some of my friends who are older are going through at a very similar time. So we've been able to relate very much through where things that most of my friends my age haven't gone through yet. So that's actually meant that we've really kind of resonated and connected on a very, equal way.
So
So
interesting you're saying that because my next question to you was exactly that. How do you perceive the aging process?
I mean, I think
It seems far away, I guess, in some ways, but you're
well, I mean, I
you're
would
faced
say
with you have
no.
it right
I
in
am
front of you.
aging. I am
Yes,
aging.
of
I've been
course.
aging since the moment I was
Mhm.
born. And I think, say, age and life, I think life stage is very interesting. If we look at that more, there's definitely things I've been through from a young age that most people haven't gone through at a young age, majority, losses, grief, things that probably did make me mature in some ways, other things that made me less mature. And again, we shouldn't denote maturity with
Yes,
age.
right.
So I'm even catching myself there. How do I think of it? I feel like for me, I think it's really important to note that for somebody working in this space day in, day out, and has been for over 10 years now, it still takes active willpower and conscious effort to drown out ageism. It is so prevalent in so many forms, in so many ways that, I mean, when you start to notice it, you can't unsee it. But yeah, like when I turned 25, I caught myself suddenly going, "Oh, do I need that cream?" Like, and then you're like, "Wait, what is going on right now?" People saying to me, "Are you going to get Botox soon?" I feel fortunate that because of the work I do, I'm able to hear that and I'm able to then be actively engage with it and question it. But let's be honest, most people can't do that because it's not what they engage with every single day. And also, the algorithm thinks I'm older because of the work I do. So I get loads of ads for retirement, later living, all
Yes.
those
Yeah.
things,
Yeah.
the stereotypical ads because the algorithm has concluded that I must be in my 50s or 60s, for example.
Right.
So I do see that. But for me, I think of aging, it's got light and shade. I think we shouldn't gloss over it and make it like this toxic positive process that everything about getting older is better. There are good things about getting older, and there are less good things about getting older. As there are when you're younger, there are good things and less good things. You know, I always think naivety is a nice thing to have
Yeah.
sometimes, like a blessing. I
Yeah.
miss the days of that sometimes. But overall, what I enjoy about getting older the most um is feeling more confident, more comfortable in my own skin, and getting my world expanding. I feel like when you're younger at school, you know, your world is quite small. And I feel very lucky that every day, every year, I really feel my world is expanding and I get to meet some really interesting people in the work that I do, go to some very interesting places. And for me, that is a huge positive. But there are other things that, yeah, like my parents are getting older. They're now in their 70s. My husband's parents in their 80s. That's not easy. And I am struggling with that.
Mhm.
So, you know, and it is creating, you know, a lot of worry and sadness. So I'm not going to say everything about getting older is perfect because I don't think it's helpful to do that. I think we go from that's just going from one extreme to another.
Jacynth, what is the one takeaway we can give older adults to help them understand they can be living their best life at any age?
And so the thing is, I feel like it is just recognizing it's never too late. And I'm not saying it has to do with something radical. I'm
Mhm.
not saying, you know, let's be honest, there might be times when you're like, okay, maybe now I probably shouldn't be jumping out of an airplane, for example. I mean, there are some people who do. We were talking about that
Yeah.
super age. There are some people who might
Yeah.
jump out of an airplane, but there might. I was interviewing Prue Leith, who's on the Great British Baking Show, one of the judges, and she's in her 80s, and she says what and I really like what she said. She's also about embracing the word old. She said, you know, I've had to adapt and I can't take as many risks with my body now. I had to realize riding, maybe I needed to be a bit more careful with riding. I love horse riding, so I needed to be a bit more careful. But in terms of just it's never too late, what I would say is it's never too late to actually start trying to reframing your thinking around aging. I think just being able to, it takes a huge amount of willpower, absolutely, but just consciously telling yourself it's okay that I am this age and actually I'm not going to let that hold me back. I might adapt. I might do things a little differently than I maybe once did, but I'm not going to let it limit me. I think that that is very powerful. And I think I can see that even with my own family, that sometimes again their internalized bias has placed limitations on them. My father-in-law is actively refusing to engage with some things that would help him age more with dignity and independence because his answer is, but that's for old people. He's rejecting it. And actually, if he could open his mind and go, it's never too late to maybe accept I am now old at 85 because you are 85 is old. Um, it statistically is. So it's not too late to go, actually, yeah, I am. But now what can I do to better support my life? To I think that, you know, that can make a big difference.
So much more to talk about, but we're out of time. And I'll have you back and we'll have a part two because
Honestly, Patricia, I always love to be invited on podcasts, but I always feel bad for the interviewer and the editor because I talk so much.
it's
I know
okay.
I've always been a chatterbox since I was a little girl, and I always think it must be a right pain then editing
Oh, it's
afterwards.
great. It's so much information. It's wonderful. Jacynth, thank you so much for joining me. And for
Thank you for
more
having me.
information about Jacynth Bassett and Ageism is Never in Style, visit www.ageismisneverinstyle.com. Thank you so much for joining us here at It's Okay to Be Old. And for more information about me and the show, you can reach out at www.patriciagreenberg.com. Thanks again and stay well and stay safe.